Hi again. I'm Kim Beal with the Woodlands Institute for Health and Wellness, and joining me today is Dr. Mila McManus, the founder of the Woodlands Institute for Health and Wellness. And Dr. McManus, tell us a little bit about this concept of adrenal fatigue.
Well, the concept of adrenal fatigue is really not something we learn about in medical school. And so most physicians are not going to be familiar with it when you try to have a discussion about it, and therefore doctors can't really address a problem that they don't even know exists. When I talk about adrenal fatigue, I tend to focus on one particular hormone called cortisol. We do learn about the extremes of adrenal function in medical school. If you are producing an excess amount of cortisol through your adrenal glands, you may be diagnosed with something called Cushing's disease. And if you are severely deficient in cortisol production, you may be diagnosed with something called Addison's disease. We all learn about these in medical school. They're in all the medical textbooks. But this whole gray area of adrenal function that we call adrenal fatigue, adrenal insufficiency, adrenal burnout, these are the things that we don't learn about in medical school and that aren't picked up on traditional blood tests.
Interesting. How would we know if we have adrenal fatigue, or if someone, for instance, thinks there might be something wrong, what would they do?
Well, we do have a questionnaire that you can do on our website at TWIHW.com, and you can test yourself for various conditions that we talk about, one of which is adrenal fatigue. And when somebody has adrenal fatigue and their adrenals aren't working properly, it's difficult to maintain your blood pressure. So you may have transient little dizzy spells, such as when you stand up too fast and you feel a little woozy right there for a second. You might have trouble maintaining your blood sugar levels, and so you find that if you go too long without eating, you might feel tired or cranky or get a headache, feel shaky or sweaty. Those are all signs of a low blood sugar. You might find that your immune system doesn't work as well. You may find that you get sick more often, or that a simple cold always turns into pneumonia. You may find that your wounds heal more slowly, and you may find that you don't handle stress as well. Anxiety is quite common, and the patients that I see who have the most severe adrenal fatigue often present with panic attacks. In addition to those being problems with the adrenals, if your adrenals aren't working very well, your thyroid is not going to work very well. And your thyroid is your internal engine, and it's what makes things go. And when your thyroid function, your engine, slows down, think of everything as being low and slow. Now, you can have a few of these symptoms, or you can have all of them. But when your engine slows down and everything's low and slow, think of your mood is low, your energy's low, your brain is slow, you have trouble processing, difficulty thinking, brain fog. Your pain threshold is low, so you tend to have more aches and pains. Your mood is low. Did I say that one? So you tend to have just depressed moods. Having adrenal fatigue also often affects your sleep, your weight. Some people lose weight with adrenal fatigue. Some people gain weight with adrenal fatigue.
Interesting.
Yeah. Your metabolism is slow in general, which would cause somebody to probably gain weight. Also, when your body temperature is created by your metabolism, and burning off calories creates that heat. So when your metabolism is slow, you tend to have your temperature run low. So you might have cold hands, cold feet, or just get really easily chilled. If you have to take a sweater into the grocery store, that may be a problem. So also with adrenal problems, your adrenals produce a lot of different hormones, and cortisol is so vital that if your body is starved of cortisol, it is going to shunt precursor hormones, namely progesterone, to make cortisol at the expense of itself. And when your progesterone becomes out of balance with estrogen, when we say estrogen dominant, the earliest telltale signs of that are PMS symptoms. Typical PMS symptoms would be fluid retention, mood swings, headaches, cravings, breast tenderness that women get prior to their periods. So if you experiencing any of those symptoms, it may be secondary to this adrenal problem you have. So if you're tired and moody and have PMS and have aches and pains, adrenal dysfunction, insufficiency, whatever you want to call it, may be a problem for you. I highly recommend you do that questionnaire on our website or call and speak to one of our wellness consultants.
Thank you, Dr. McManus. Do I understand adrenal function to be related to the fight or flight?
Yes,
issue?
It can be. I'll explain further. Okay, so cortisol is one of the fight or flight hormones, along with adrenaline, which is another hormone that's produced by the adrenal glands. And this adrenal response to stress, when I'm explaining to audience, I like to take back to the caveman days. And when you were a caveman, you had to worry about where are you getting your next meal?
Right.
And all the lions, tigers, and bears out there that can harm you. So let's say, Mr. Caveman, you get approached by a tiger. And you have a split second to decide if you are going to fight this tiger, if you are going to flee the other direction as quickly as possible, or if you're going to climb that tree over yonder. And for you to be able to do that, it's going to require a rush of hormones, a rush of blood sugar. So when cortisol levels elevate immediately, that raises your blood sugar levels so that you can feed your brain to think really sharply on your feet, feed your muscles to give you that superhuman strength to run faster than you ever have, climb that tree that you might not be able to normally. It's also the adrenaline's gonna clench your blood vessels down so that you don't bleed to death if you get bitten or scratched, or pass out from blood loss if you do get bitten or scratched. So now if you forward to 2011, you find that most of us are surrounded by tigers 24/7. We all have different tigers. They're all coming and going at different times. But your tigers may be the stress that you have at your work, the stress that you have at home, the stress of what is happening in the economy, taking care of ailing parents. Maybe it's a good stress, but it's still a stress. Maybe you moved across the country, you're excited about it, but it does create some stress. Or your daughter's getting married, something along those lines. So when we are under chronic stress, our adrenal glands aren't meant to be up here in fight or flight mode all the time, and eventually they wear out. The adrenals become fatigued. And I call this a relative cortisol deficiency because your blood levels of cortisol are likely going to be in normal range. It's just that your body's not producing the amount of cortisol that you need to mount the responses you need. And so, such as raising your blood sugar to compensate for a skipped meal when your blood sugar starts to fall. Clench your blood vessels down to raise your blood pressure up so you don't pass out when you might get dehydrated, etc. So can't mount the immune responses as well, and that's what leads to, oh, your wounds are healing more slowly, or you get sick more often, and when you're around your co-workers or your kids bring home their colds from school, you know, oh gosh, I'm always gonna get it too. So those are the kinds of things we look at when we're assessing somebody's adrenals. There are other ways you can assess adrenals through saliva testing, where you collect saliva specimens throughout the day to look at what your cortisol graph looks like. And cortisol should be highest in the morning, and then the levels should fall smoothly throughout the day as your body is sort of using it up. And then that drop in cortisol signals you to go to sleep, and it's while you're sleeping that your adrenals are replenishing its supply of cortisol for the next day. But the saliva testing can tell different stories because there are different phases of adrenal fatigue. You might be what we call a flatliner, where you just have low cortisol all day, all the time. Some people have a reverse curve and their circadian rhythm is completely off. Their cortisol is low in the morning and then it suddenly spikes in the evening. So you're in this tired brain fog all day long, never feeling like you're fully awake. And then come 9 o'clock when it's time to go to bed, you're up and at 'em, right?
Right.
And then there are other graphs I've seen in patients where cortisol's up and down throughout the day, and it kind of spikes in different times of the day, and so people can have these highs and lows. The first and foremost is you need to reduce the burden on your adrenal glands. Things that are burdens to your adrenal glands, think of piling on bags onto a mule. That mule can only carry so much up that hill. And if you've got so much piled up on that mule, he's not going to go very fast. So take some pack off the mule, and that will help reduce that burden on your adrenal glands. If you're not sleeping well, you need to get that addressed and make sure that you're getting adequate sleep. If your lifestyle is not allowing you to get adequate sleep, you need to figure out how to compensate for that or work towards that goal, because you're going to require sleep to function properly, have a good immune system in the long run. If you suspect that you may have sleep apnea, you might want to get that tested for. If you know you have sleep apnea and you're treating with a CPAP machine, but your CPAP machine's in the closet, you might want to pull that out. That's important.
Wipe the dust off that machine.
That's right. And nutrition is key. There are various vitamins that are really important for supporting your adrenal glands, your immune system. Things like vitamin C and magnesium and the B vitamins play a role. Figure out what kind of food sensitivities you might have. This is a very common problem that is really neglected and missed in the traditional medical model, but I find quite often in my patients. And if you are eating things that may be causing any of your symptoms, and you may not even know this, that is a huge burden on your adrenal glands and your immune system. Cleaning up the diet in general is key. If you eat a lot of processed foods, things that are in boxes and wrappers, you eat a lot of fast foods that are really nutritionally deficient, and in addition full of preservatives and flavorings and artificial sweeteners. If you're looking at ingredient labels that say sugar, sugar, chemical, chemical, sugar, chemical, chemical, probably shouldn't be eating that. It can't be doing your body good. So these are some of the things that we address. Depending on the severity of one's adrenal fatigue, it might require prescription hormones, and I might prescribe a patient a very low dose of cortisol. And there's a big difference between the high doses of steroids that are prescribed in traditional medicine, which are meant to suppress your immune system. They suppress your adrenal glands, and these might be prescribed for autoimmune diseases and horrific joint pain, emphysema, asthma exacerbations, poison ivy, things like that are meant to suppress your immune system. When we do prescribe low doses of cortisol, these are what we call physiologic doses to help support the adrenals and what they're not able to produce for you. And just a tiny, tiny dose can go a long way with helping immediately with energy and mood and aches and pains and allergy problems. Kickstart your thyroid again, which will get the ball rolling with mental sharpness and get your metabolism going again, things like that. So, and if somebody's adrenal fatigue is such that it's causing other hormonal imbalances, we might consider working to balance those hormones out as well, sometimes with supplements, sometimes with the prescribing of bioidentical hormones, which we'll talk about in a different video.